So I've been researching this topic for quite a few years, and what we did is we went to dark web and deep web and started collecting everything that happens
Sorry,
there.
just let me interject. How many of you know what dark web and deep web really mean? So a lot don't know. Maybe you might want to just...
I didn't raise my hand either, so can you explain? I think every day I know less.
well, okay, that's good too. That's a dark, deep web. Well,
if we split internet into 3 different layers, the visible one, so there's one part where you go with your browser and you search something with Google because there's no other search engines left, and then you discover a website. That's pretty much the surface internet. And then there's something that you get a link from someone, and that's something that you can't find using conventional search engines. Then we call it deep web because it's not visible. And then there's the third part, which is called dark web, where you need to have a specific browser, usually a Tor browser, to access it. And that makes it the connection completely anonymous and encrypted. So basically whatever you do in dark web, no one technically knows who you are. And that's why that place is rather interesting for this kind of research, because when hackers discuss there, the discussion is actually quite open, because there's no risk of getting caught, unless, of course, you sort of reveal too much information about yourself, whether it's about telling your hobbies or name or something, which they usually don't do. But from technical perspective, that's the anonymous part of internet. So anyway, back to the topic. So we've been collecting everything that happens there, all the data that's been leaked. It doesn't matter from where, we just collected it and started to recognize how should we categorize this information, and what, not just how do we categorize, but how can we actually detect that this information belongs to a certain entity, for example, government, individual, or a company. And then we found 3 exposure classes that can be always tied to an organization. They are sensitive information, which typically means contents of email messages. They can be detected rather easily. Then source code, if they are a technology company. And then, of course, business documents such as Word files, PDFs, and so on. So that's the sensitive information part. Then the second part which we discovered was exposed credentials. So basically usernames and passwords. So because when you log into these 90 applications that you have, your username is typically your email address. So then that always creates a link to an organization. Within 3.5 years, we have found over 5 billion passwords for different applications so far. Then the third one is hacker groups targeting, so organizations and individuals. So when the hackers are talking about their campaigns, where they're going to attack, they will name that, because they don't know each other either. So they will name, these are the companies, these are the IP addresses, these are the domain names, or these are the individuals we're going to attack. So that also creates link to an organization. So after we had this research done, we started to sort of combine this information and map it to different companies. So we've been doing this for 3 years now. So we just published the latest cyber exposure index. So if you go to cyberexposure.index.com, you will see, for example, all Singaporean publicly listed companies and how much these kind of exposure classes have a link to that organization, which basically means how many passwords have been exposed, how much sensitive information has been exposed, or if hacker groups are actually talking about attacking them. So that's sort of our cybersecurity use case for sort of sense-making this massive pile of data that previously didn't sort of, wasn't really organized.
so what's the best behavior then for you as somebody who has an organization? How should you operate? How should you work with all your passwords and your data and all that kind of stuff to keep it secure?
Yeah, so there's 2 things. One is the organization is trying to protect themselves. Individuals are trying to protect themselves. Sometimes they overlap, sometimes they don't. But most of the whole cybersecurity, even lecturers talk about how to defend without understanding how the attack works. So hackers spend roughly about 90% of their time finding enough information to conduct the attack. So they don't attack, they don't wear hoodies in the dark and try to hack you all the time. They will just collect a lot of information. And once they have enough information, it might take just 5 minutes. So the thing is, the more there's exposed information about the organization, the more this reconnaissance phase has already been completed for them. So if they try to choose a target, in every movie they always choose the most difficult company because it's so hard to get in. But in real life, if someone hands over a file, this is everything you need to attack a company, of course they will attack there. So that's sort of the organizational perspective. So it's really important to know how exposed you are, and also make sure that you don't create these links to your organizations. So when people are using Facebook, LinkedIn, all these kind of social media accounts, they should use their personal accounts. So then it doesn't create a link to the organization. Even when dating sites get hacked, there's a lot of links to organizations because people are using their company emails, which is a bit embarrassing when it happens. Hacker ecosystem is quite thriving right now. So there's different kind of blocks of ecosystem. Someone is good at finding servers, someone is good at finding databases, someone can hack databases, someone can monetize passwords, someone can monetize credit cards and so on. So there's massive ecosystem there. So, but what is paid and what is not is really difficult to distinguish because the transaction is not really public, and the motivation might be different. So the thing is, we find roughly about 15 million active credit cards all the time. So when the banks start closing the credit cards, there will be more credit cards. So they are all valuable assets because you can actually use them to buy something online. So why do we find these credit cards for free? It's because the hackers are trying to build for example, their brand. So in dark web, if you go there, you want to buy something, you're more likely to get it there than from any normal online store, especially in Singapore. They always cancel everything. But in dark web, if you want to buy, whether it's fake credit cards or drugs or weapons or whatever, or even legal things, the customer service is 100 times better than in real world because no one knows you. So when no one knows you, you are only as trustworthy as your latest transaction because every time someone buys something, they will rate you. So if you mess up once, no one will ever buy again. So that's why it's really difficult to distinguish the difference when something is paid and something is not, because they first need to have the reputation in order to monetize their own part of the supply chain.